guess I gotta do this one. I'm a little late getting to it, but I said I'd do it, so I'm doing it. So there's this YouTuber called SSundee. He makes Minecraft and Fortnite videos, which as I understand it tend to have a pretty young demographic. Not Spider-Man, Elsa, Johnny,
Yes, Papa.
weird baby, text-to-speech, finger family.
Purple color.
Man, I'm glad my kid outgrew this young, but young. Just look at the thumbnails from his channel, there's no way this is targeted towards adults. And it seems to be an effective strategy, the guy's at over 10 million subs, and normally I wouldn't care at all, I mean, kids like video games, fine, nothing wrong with that. But when a channel like this makes a video like the one we're about to look at, I do find it a little troubling. This video has about 1.4 million views, well over 100,000 thumbs up, and only a few thousand thumbs down. And the reason that bothers me is that this video is an attempt by SSundee to use the threat of hell to terrify his young audience into joining his religion. And that's part of why it took me longer than I intended to get this video done. I mean, I also had all the issues with Patreon to deal with and a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff to fix up to deal with that and some other things, and that stuff also soaked up a lot of my time this month. This month being December when I'm making this video. I know I'm publishing it in January. But aside from that, I find that when something I'm responding to makes me genuinely angry, it can be really hard to find the lighter side and actually have any fun making the video at all. And that does matter to me. So I often wind up not responding to the stuff that really bothers me and just doing something less stressful instead, even if that might get me less views. It's technically part of my job description to make videos that'll get a lot of views, but I also like doing videos I can get some kind of enjoyment out of, and which don't put my head in a dark, miserable fog for the next 2 weeks. And that's what I've been assuming making this video will inevitably lead me to. I can start to feel it already just thinking about it, that tension, that smoldering anger, that sadness and confusion about how anyone could actually hold these terrible beliefs about other people and try to scare people into believing the same awful things they do, and somehow still truly believe they're acting loving and kind. Call me the stereotypical angry atheist if you like, but I think most people feel something similar when they believe someone's directing misanthropic falsehoods and threats at children and trying to make those kids feel intense fear and panic just to manipulate them. Imagine if instead of just pushing how great some toy is, a kid's TV ad said something like, "Hey kids, get your parents to buy you this toy or your whole family's gonna die." You'd probably have a bit of a problem with it. I know a lot of Christians and Muslims feel something similar when they hear me spreading ideas that go completely against what they believe is good and right and important, and they're entitled to feel that way, even though I don't use threats or target kids to spread my opinions, like SSundee's doing here. And just as those religious people are entitled to their strong feelings about it, atheists like me are equally entitled. People sometimes have strong feelings about stuff they think matters, get over it. However, I would rather not feel that way because it's unpleasant, and when I get a heavy dose of it, that feeling that everything is wrong in the world can last for days. Even so, though, I said I'd respond to it, and I know I should respond to it, and I will respond to it. But for my sanity, I'm gonna try my best to keep this light and just get through it without too much ranting.
So dudes, listen, this video, it's a different type of video. I don't normally do this type of thing.
Well, at least there's that.
But I felt led to do this.
If you were led to do it, how do you know you weren't misled?
And I know this video is going to be very controversial for a lot of you guys and probably other YouTubers and whatnot. I'll probably get attacked a little bit, but I'm fine with that.
I doubt you'll get attacked at all. You've already been the subject of a few debunk videos, for example from Viced Rhino, and those people publicly disagreed with your public statements, but those aren't attacks, they're disagreements. I suppose you could see that as a bit of a nitpicky point, but I don't think it is, because you seem to be trying to preempt criticism of your behavior by portraying people who disagree publicly with what you're doing here as some kind of aggressors against you as a person, rather than just people who are expressing their opinions about your opinions.
It's just, I don't know, I felt led to do this.
While I'm thinking about it, let me also mention that while I find what you're doing really awful, I do recognize that to a person within your belief system, it seems like a perfectly rational and kind thing to do. To try to warn people about the hell you sincerely believe your loving God will inflict on its children if they don't hold the correct opinions. And as a result, even if I do get a little heated in this video, I don't think that deep down you're a bad person for doing what you're doing. Not exactly. As they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. From everything I've seen, you seem like a sincere person who really wants the best for other people, and you've just been misled into believing that telling people to cower in fear and mutter prayers is best for them. Or in other words, your goodness has been hijacked by your belief system to make you act like a complete asshole and think you're great. If anything, you're a victim of other people doing exactly the same thing you're doing now, and so is basically everyone I've replied to on this subject. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't exonerate you, because I think you should have spent a lot more time critically examining your beliefs before you started to spread them, especially before you started to use this approach. The reasoning on display in this video is laughably bad, and if that's anything like the kind of reasoning that brought you to Christianity, you really did not think very hard about it. And you're old enough that the only person who can reasonably be held responsible for your failure to think critically and the actions you take as the result of your failure is you. The people who watched my recent responses to Emmanuel Matos might remember that I spent a fair amount of time talking about why I spend so much time debunking religious ideas, and this is a good example. An action like trying to scare kids with threats of hell that, as many of my ex-religious viewers can confirm, does cause pain and fear and suffering and makes life worse for so many people, can seem like the most noble and justified thing to people who hold certain religious worldviews. You feel like a savior coming to rescue people from something terrible, even as you burden them with something terrible. And I understand, if your worldview were accurate, the pain you cause with this stuff would be outweighed by the pain you'd be saving people from. But the problem is, every time I try to probe the reasoning behind these opinions, none of the reasoning makes any sense at all. As far as I can tell, all you're doing is spreading terror and misery in service of lies because you're greedy for rewards and you're scared of punishments. And that's a problem that, as long as it exists, will never cease to be worth talking about.
With that being said, as you guys know, a few months ago, earlier this year, I became a Christian.
No, you didn't. I did my homework on this. I checked your video from February. February. God damn it.
I've always been a religious type of person. Same with, you guys know Preston Plays. He's very open about his religion. I'm a very religious person. I'm a Christian, and I've always followed values that were Christianity, but I've never really thought about what it actually meant. What I'm doing right now is I'm truly giving my life to God. I'm letting Him, I'm His servant.
So you said it yourself, you didn't become a Christian, you were already a Christian and then you got more serious about it. Now, in that video you don't give a reason for why you made that change, but you seem to imply it. And if my inference is correct, your reasons were even worse than the hell threat nonsense in this video.
I'm trying very hard to give everything I can to God, which leads me to YouTube. Over the course of 5-6 years, I have given every ounce of me to YouTube videos. I wasn't healthy. As you guys saw in my last video, my wife was not happy about it. It hurt a lot of things. I turned into a very bad person that I did not recognize, and I'm not going to go into too many details. But when it comes to YouTube, I'm giving it to God. I'm going to let Him do work in me, build me up to the person that He wants me to be. If you guys saw my last video, you know myself and my wife, Madeline, we separated. It's not easy. It's not easy. We're still separated. But what I'm doing right now, I'm giving that relationship 100% to God.
So what that sounds like to me is you thought you were a bad person, you were having some marital issues, and so you decided to recommit yourself to Christianity. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds like a purely emotional response to a challenging life event, not a position arrived at through careful thought.
Which Christianity is a religion where the basics of the Christian religion is we put our faith or our belief into God or Jesus, and then when you die, you either go to heaven or hell based on what you believe.
And you see no problem with that. Infinite rewards and infinite punishments being given not for anything you did, but just for what you were sincerely convinced was true. You presumably think God is loving and just and all that, but how can punishing someone forever just for their opinion, or lack thereof, be loving or just? Are you somehow able to reconcile this in your head, or do you just believe God is a monster who needs to be appeased? Because at least in the latter case, your belief system stands some chance of being internally consistent.
That's the basics idea of Christianity. Obviously, I'm learning so much more. I'm constantly learning.
That's good, I guess, but you don't really need to. The incoherency of the basic idea is more than enough to discard it as nonsense already.
I felt led to make this video. Let's look at this list here. Let's go down this list. So these are the world's 20 largest religions and their number of believers. So
the third largest religion is no religion. Okay, whoever wrote this sucks at their job. But fine, not your fault, and I get what they mean, so move on.
Number one, we have my religion, which is Christianity. There's 2.1 billion people in the world that have said, I'm a Christian. You go down one more line, Islam, 1.3 billion, which I've learned a little bit about Islam. The main thing I want to talk about is the third line here.
Wait, that's all you're gonna say about Islam? That you learned a little bit about it? Why even bring it up if that's all you're gonna say? But listen, here's some serious advice for you. Keep learning about Islam. And when you realize that you don't believe the vast majority of the claims of that religion, ask yourself why. And then whatever your answers are, try to apply those to Christianity as well and see if it can withstand the same arguments, because the reasons people have for believing in both religions tend to be basically identical. Oh, you had a come to Jesus moment in a time of crisis? Well, there's a Muslim who had basically the exact same come to Allah moment. Oh, you're afraid of going to hell, so you worship Jesus as your God just in case? Well, Islam calls that shirk, the worst possible sin, the only sin for which you will never be forgiven if you die in that state. So if you find Pascal's wager convincing, you'd better reject Jesus and embrace Islam to avoid hell. But you don't, do you? And why not? The reasoning is the exact same. And that goes for just about any argument you can come up with for why Christianity is the true religion. The exact same argument, or a very similar one, will work for Islam just as well, which is to say not very well at all. So yeah, keep studying Islam. That will do a lot for you.
Non-religious, which is either secular, agnostic, or atheist, right? There's 1.1 billion people in the world. And that's what scares me.
Well, it scares me that everyone but 1.1 billion people believe some variation of the biggest load of bullshit ever dreamt up by human beings, but you don't hear me complaining. Actually, you do hear that. A lot. Never mind then, carry on.
For you guys that don't know what this line is, atheists are people that they don't believe in a God. They don't believe that there is a higher power out there. They believe in the universe. They believe that the universe was created by nothing, and they believe in no God.
I've heard worse definitions. I'm really not sure where you got that bit that atheists believe the universe was created by nothing. You know, the mere fact that someone doesn't believe in gods implies nothing about their beliefs on whether the universe was created or began, or how that happened, or anything, right? I mean, aside from the fact they don't think it was a god. They could believe it's anything else, though. I don't know why stuff that has nothing to do with atheism gets jammed into the definition of atheism so often.
And again, with this video, I'm not trying to pressure anybody.
You're not? Then why are you trying to convert people by scaring them with the thought of eternal torture instead of, presenting reasons why you think your religion is actually true, that you think might convince people? What planet are you living on where you think trying to terrify people into agreeing with you isn't trying to pressure them into agreeing with you?
I'm just trying to talk to you guys that are looking for something, that are interested, that do maybe look at life. I don't know. If this isn't for you, I'm not trying to offend you by any means.
I love my government. I love it so much that I've dedicated my life to serving it. And I want you to know that if you don't love my government as much as I do, government agents will drag you into a van and take you to a warehouse and pull out your fingernails and teeth. No pressure, but right now you've kind of got it coming. No offense. Isn't the government perfect?
Non-religious, 1.1 billion people in the world are not religious. They don't believe in anything. Maybe they do believe in something, but I don't know.
That should have been pretty easy for you to figure out in all your learning. Really, you shouldn't have even needed to pick it up from learning about it. Like, how old are you, dude? You look like my age. I don't know, maybe you're a bit younger, but you're married. You had a hair transplant to fix your receding hairline.
So I got a hair transplant. That red line there, that's gonna be my new hairline. Look how much my hair has receded. Some advice to you guys, don't have bad genetics and don't get old. This is what could happen.
That's not to say I think you're old. A lot of people get a receding hairline fairly young, but you're not a little boy, and yet you're still unsure whether non-religious people believe in nothing. How hard do you have to actively avoid learning your whole life to still have no clue about that at your age? Well, here's the quick answer for you so you don't have to divert time away from your Islam studies. Non-religious people can believe in anything except a religion because that's the only thing the label non-religious says about them. It's mind-blowingly complicated, isn't it?
I want to talk to those people. So, what is like I said, I'm gonna try to keep this short.
Oh man, I better do that too. Look how long this already is. How does this always happen? It's alright though, I think you take a long time to make the Pascal's wager argument, and I can probably cut most of that out and just leave a little bit to get the point across. We'll be alright for time, no part 2. By the way, audience, because I'm going to start cutting a lot soon to try to speed this up, I recommend watching the full video for context. As always, it's linked in the description.
What is the idea of life? What do most people want in this life? You know, you're born. Your parents try to give you a comfortable, good life. Keep that in mind, good.
Yeah, parents usually try to give kids a good and comfortable life, sure. Except, of course, for everybody's parent, God, if your religion is true, he's gonna chuck most of his kids into hell. As you said, you go to heaven or hell based on whether you believe in God and Jesus. So basically everyone on your list here, except these 2.1 billion people, are going straight to hell. Maybe even some of the Christians will go there, depending on where you pin the tail on that donkey. So, billions of the people alive today are gonna burn in hell in the least good, least comfortable life imaginable because they were put there by their dad, God. And that's just counting the people alive right now. There's a lot more who lived before and haven't lived yet. Anyway, it's starting already, your slowness getting to the point. Because from here, you go on like this for over 30 seconds, giving all kinds of examples, just to get to the point that you want good things and not bad things to happen in your life, right? Meaning, you'd rather not be tortured in hell forever, right? So yeah, skipping that waste of time.
So I went ahead and made this very elaborate graph. Okay, you like this? Pretty good. So I put good on the right side, and then what's the opposite of good? We got bad. I'm such an idiot.
No, please, don't put yourself down. You're super smart.
And then in the middle, we'll just throw down okay, neutral. Okay, it's just like, all right, you know, it's just okay. So let's look at this graph. I'm dumbing this down a lot because I'm just not smart enough.
You're not dumbing it down at all. Pascal's Wagers actually as dumb as you're going to make it seem.
Like I said, everybody wants to live a good life. Now, this is pertaining to after you're dead, afterlife. After you die, where do you go? What happens to us as humans? And just like life, after you die, you probably want to go somewhere good. Right? You probably want to do something good. Now,
I want to go somewhere good, I get that, but I also want to do something good? How is being sent to heaven a good thing to do? I know it's minor, but it's just such a weird way to present that.
So let's say you're a Christian. And there's other religions as well, but I'm just talking about Christianity and non-religious right now. So
why? You just said you think you go to heaven or hell based on whether you believe in God and Jesus. That means when you talk about who you think is going to hell, you're talking about everyone on that list but the Christians, not just the non-religious. When it comes to your wager, there's no distinction between being an atheist, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Jew, or anyone else who doesn't believe Jesus is their savior. They're all gonna burn in hell all the same, right? So why are you only addressing the non-religious here when your argument applies to most of the people on Earth right now?
Let's talk about the Christian religion. When you die, if you believe in Jesus and God, you go to a place called heaven, which is eternal happiness. Eternal greatness is what we believe.
Am I the only one who finds it really creepy that this whole video is made with even the simplest concepts being explained in extremely simplistic language, as if it's meant for a bunch of children with no strong language skills who haven't even heard of things like heaven before? Like, does SSundee just happen to talk like a kindergarten teacher all the time, or is he deliberately making this for young children? It's one thing to make a video like this on a channel that just happens to have a young demographic, but it's another thing to deliberately make it for young kids. Either way, the approach of over-explaining even the simplest things as if to a small child causes a problem here because it takes, and I am not kidding, 4.5 minutes to explain the incredibly simple argument that I'm about to make for you, SSundee, in just a few seconds. Ready? The blue here shows what might happen to a Christian who dies, and the yellow shows what might happen to the non-religious person who dies. If Christianity is true, Christians go somewhere good when they die, and atheists go somewhere bad. And if atheists are right, everyone just ceases to exist, which is okay or neutral. So therefore, place your bet on Christianity because it has a chance of taking you somewhere good, and atheism only has a chance of taking you somewhere bad or neutral. That's the entire argument, and I think the way I just said it was simple enough for a child to understand it, and it sure as hell didn't take 4.5 minutes. Honestly, SSundee, I've never heard anyone talk so much and say so little. Alright, so now that we know what the argument is, let's talk about what makes Pascal's Wager such a terrible, unconvincing argument. I've already talked about how it leads to confusion as soon as you introduce another religious belief system like Islam, which has a similar punishment and reward system but different tenets. But that barely scratches the surface, because in fact there's not just one other possibility that conflicts with yours, but in fact there are as many as humans are capable of making up. So effectively infinite possibilities that'll result in you being sent to hell or heaven. You've presented it like a 50-50 choice. Either Christianity is true and you risk going to hell, or it's not true and you don't risk that. But that's not correct. Now, the fact that there's infinite possibilities that can be made up for how you would get sent to hell or heaven isn't really a problem if you base your belief on carefully studying which ideas appear to be the most true. But that's not what you're proposing people do. What you're proposing is not that people should try to believe in Christianity because here's a bunch of reasons why it's true. You're proposing they should believe it because hell sounds scary, and whether it's true or not is only a secondary concern. Which raises the question, what will you do if someone makes up an outcome that sounds scarier than yours? For example, what if God doesn't actually favor the religious, but religions are actually all man-made lies and they infuriate him, and he's observing to see which people will not be gullible enough to believe them, and not commit the grievous sin of believing and spreading the lies? And what if it's those people, the non-religious, the non-sinners, who wind up in heaven and the religious are the ones deemed unworthy and tossed into hell? You see, if your starting point is fear of something you have no reason to think is true, you have just as much reason to be afraid of that outcome as of yours. So, by your own logic, you have just as much reason to try not to be a Christian as to be one, to avoid being fooled into thinking it's true as to think it's true. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, in my version, the flames of hell are twice as painful as the Christian hell, and heaven feels twice as good. So now my option is way worse if you die with the wrong belief, and way better if you die with the right one. It is clearly the better bet. So deconvert or burn in hell, Christian. Now, this probably all sounds really dumb and not that scary to you, I bet. So now you understand just how dumb Pascal's wager sounds to me. This is what happens when your standard is not to believe what evidence and solid arguments lead you to believe, but instead just whatever sounds scary. But you know, it'd be a little less goofy if at least you applied that ludicrous standard evenly. But you don't. My scenario is twice as scary as yours, but it's not what you've decided in advance that you want to believe, so you're just going to toss the what's scarier criterion aside because it's not convenient to what you already believe. Or hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you'll try to force yourself to disbelieve in God now. But I think I can be forgiven if I highly doubt the likelihood of that happening. Anyway, that alone is enough to make the argument fail miserably, but there's more. Because like I said, there are infinite similar scary scenarios people can come up with, so the chance of you being right when you make a decision based on scariness alone is basically nil. Even Christianity has conflicting ideas about the criteria for going to heaven or hell. What is the point in dedicating your whole life to a gamble with infinitely bad odds when instead you could dedicate it to questioning and really trying to figure out what's true, regardless of who presents the most extreme threats and promises, and actually stand a chance of reaching some sort of real understanding? Isn't that better than just kind of faking it till you make it just to try to save your own skin from something that has a 1 in infinity chance of being true because you never bothered to figure out if it actually is? Would God really accept that anyway? Like, do you think it would count for anything if you died praising Jesus? Not because you've been actually convinced he's real, but just because you're scared out of your wits after hearing a spooky story? Really? Something else I find a little weird about this argument is that it seems to assign all of the importance of human belief only to the impact it has after the human dies, not to the impact it has while they're alive. To me, this is the argument of a person who's living for death, someone to whom life has no meaning. It presents the outcome as being totally neutral if you wrongly believe in something and then die and cease to exist. Except it's not totally neutral. Maybe it is if what happens to the living means nothing to you, and the only thing worth taking into account is what happens to the dead. But frankly, I don't see how that's an effective way to live your life. Is the impact of these beliefs on your life and on the world totally irrelevant to you? Unworthy of taking into consideration when you're trying to figure out the impact? You might think it doesn't matter because you believe Christianity can only possibly have a positive impact on the living, and fine, but that's you. I disagree. For one thing, it makes people do what you're doing right now, trying to instill terror into young people, and if what you believe is not true, then not even for a good reason. I regularly talk to people who struggle every day with the psychological harm the belief in hell or other aspects of religious belief cause them, or the problems their religion caused in their personal life or in their community or whatever. And because I value the well-being of people, I think this matters. I think it's important not to pretend that spending your entire life serving a lie out of fear of non-existent consequences balances out to neutral or okay, as long as when you die you don't exist anymore. That's not neutral, that's not okay, it's awful. So I could probably go on for hours about Pascal's wager, but those points for me are more than enough to show that it's a garbage argument, which, yeah, may sound compelling to someone who's failed to invest a moment's thought into it, but nothing more.
But if you're an atheist and you die, and let's say Christianity is correct, now what happens? And this is the controversial part of all of this, because why would a loving, caring God send any of his creation to somewhere like this, which is hell? Those are the questions that we're constantly asking.
Good. I'm glad you're asking it, because that's a critical flaw in your theology. Your beliefs are self-contradictory. A loving, caring God that treats its creation in the least loving, least caring way imaginable. That contradiction means your beliefs are false. And if your wager is based on them, then your wager is pointless. So you ask this question constantly, do you? Have you bothered to find an answer?
But, with that being said, if you are an atheist and what we believe as Christians is true, you go to a place called hell, which is eternal torment, eternal pain, suffering, just not good.
I see. So you're not even going to try to answer the question. You just mentioned the most glaring flaw in your belief system, so severe that it smashes the whole thing to rubble. And instead of giving some reason why it doesn't smash it to rubble, you're just not going to mention it again and continue to make the argument you just refuted as if nothing happened. Great.
Again, I'm not pressuring anybody. You guys are going to make your own choices.
Of course they're going to make their own choices. That doesn't mean you're not pressuring them to make your choice. What is your reasoning here? That if you pressure someone into making one choice and then they make a different choice, you never pressured them in the first place? The amount of pressure applied is altered by the effectiveness of that pressure? Dude, your brain fascinates me.
I've watched on YouTube. If you look on YouTube and type in near-death experience, Christianity or whatever, you're going to hear some scary stories. People have died, been risen, come back to life, and they've seen hell, and it's scary. It is very scary.
Yes, scary stories can be scary. You know the one about the little boy who sucked his thumb? His mother told him to stop, but he didn't, so a tailor came along and cut his thumbs off with scissors. Scary stuff. Ooh. But fortunately, just because a story scares you doesn't mean it's true. No, not even if the person telling you the story says it's real and they're totally super serial, you guys.
I'm super serial.
That'd probably be worth you figuring out sooner rather than later, SSundee. I know you make dumb videos for little kids, but that doesn't mean you should have the thinking skills of a dumb little kid at your age. Well, I guess that's all I have to say. I got through that without going on a giant super angry rant, so I'm actually pretty happy with it. Give it a like if you agree. And if you like my stuff, please consider supporting me on Patreon like the great people on the screen, or you can do monthly recurring donations through PayPal. And if none of those suit you, in the description you'll find a link to my website with a bunch of other options, including, for example, cryptocurrency and Paywhirl and stuff like that. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for watching me through 2018. I'm going into 2019 strong, I'm feeling really good about it, and I'm gonna do my best to make it a great year. Hopefully you'll stick with me. See you in the next video.